And I was reading this article here in Macro Business. Guess who loves Albo's Giant Australia? And the article is talking about how in New South Wales the government has basically stepped over a lot of the local councils, which generally oppose this kind of thing, um, to approve a whole bunch of massive high-rise developments, which because of all the immigrants that are pouring in. So yeah, some of the kind of wider areas in Sydney, areas that are upper middle class or middle class whites, the local councils are trying to block this, but the government is kind of stepping over it. And a very, very happy man is the Jewish billionaire Harry Chugubov. I think he's, according to Forbes, something like the sixth richest man in Australia. He runs Meriton, one of the biggest developers in Australia. They build high-rise apartments everywhere, and he's very happy with the new premier, and it's just kind of an interesting story because of Trugubov. This is a guy who I got quotes here from him because he's very active in the property lobby and has been for decades. One of many wealthy property developers, particularly Jewish property developers, that are active. Now, in 2006, he was quoted, calling, as always, for a massive boost to immigration. He said, "We want Australia to have a population of 150 million people by 2050. Not 50 million, 150 million. And to this end, he argued that national parks should be bulldozed, made way for housing, saying you should be able to go north from Sydney." He said that you go north from Sydney, we have all these national parks and reserves, and you go south, you have all these reserves, and they are the best part of the coast. This is crazy. We should be building on this area.
Shouldn't the Greens
want to see trees?
Shouldn't the Greens be weighing in on this? Where are the environmental activists on this one?
Yeah, of course. He says if people want to see trees, they can go to Katoomba, which is in the Blue Mountains. There are plenty of trees there. So he just wants to bulldoze all of this beautiful nature. I mean, this is what white people like to do. We like to actually protect part of nature. We like to have places to go, bushwalks and so on. He wants to bulldoze all of that to build all these high-rise apartments all over it and stuff them full of Chinese people and Indians and so on. And these are the kinds of people. This is one of the number one, well, not number one, but it's one of the top political donors in Australia. This Jewish property developer who calls the shots. Anyway, so, and he's got the New South Wales government in his pocket. He's Sydney-based, and I think Paul Keating, former Prime Minister, often made jokes about how the Trugubov basically owns New South Wales government kind of property planning or whatever. So, this is like another component to this, talking about the housing crisis and talking about the immigration crisis and what's driving it. It's this property lobby that is one of the key elements, because obviously we need the more people that come in, the more it jacks up house prices. We talked about it a lot. The more demand there is for housing, and the more money there is to be made, the more they can kind of get the government to allow them to build these high-rise apartments and so on. And the kinds of people who like to live in these high-rise apartments are generally these immigrants from overseas who are more used to that style of living, which is not organic to the Australian dream of having a house built on the ground with a backyard. That's what white Australians generally prefer. But yeah, so what's your thoughts on this, Blair?
Well, the idea of a family home has undergone some radical changes. Has anyone followed that guy? He's like, I don't know if he's Greek, but he's like the site inspector or something. He's got a following on TikTok. What he does is he goes to people's homes who are just recently being built by large volume builders, like I don't know if it's Fairhaven Homes is probably one of them, and so forth. A volume builder is a builder that just builds a hell of a lot of shitty, cheap homes out in the former swamplands, out in places where we didn't build because no one wanted to live there when we first colonized Australia. We built in the most livable areas, right? And we left the swamplands because they just weren't livable. Now these big volume builders, who is this guy? Does anyone know him? Site inspector. He's really cool. He reveals how, what's the right word for it? Incomplete, disastrous. The word he uses is non-compliance. how incompliant with Australian building standards all these houses are. These houses are falling apart a lot of the time. And some people, it's cheaper for them to actually try to find a new private builder to actually repair and build their house properly than it is to take the high volume builder to court to try to get them to actually cover the costs of what needs to be done in order for the house to be livable and up to standard, right? But I've just been to Cranbourne recently, and Cranbourne is full of these former swamplands where nobody wanted to build. And now there's a lot of houses out in Cranbourne built by these high volume builders. They're all basically the same house with a different facade. So it's relatively the same plan for each house, but just the front of the house has changed up a little bit to make it look unique, but they're not unique from each other. And they're basically sitting next to each other, like up against each other. Like I could probably just put my hand through these homes, and there's no real front yard, there's no real backyard, and that's what they call a family home now in Australia. But people keep accepting it. People keep buying these homes and moving here. So as long as they keep selling, I suppose they'll keep building them. I couldn't imagine living in one though. You know, I don't know. Like, I haven't really worked in any of these high volume builders directly, so I can at least say that, right? I don't work in construction anymore, but I don't know, man. It's clear to me that immigration is driving big business, or is at least in the interests of big business. It's keeping the rich rich, and it's making them richer in some circumstances. And it's ironic when you consider that all of the most intellectually energetic or academic members of our nation, Australians, who are into activism and, you know, sort of like raising issues on the streets and politics, they're all demanding more immigration because the universities that educate them have been directly lobbied by these big business groups who all want more immigration because it makes them richer. But these people that campaign for more immigration, whether it's more refugees or multiculturalism, they think they're fighting for that because it's in the interests of some human rights campaign, or it's about equality or something like that, some nice slogan that they've been spelled by. But they're all just working for the rich. They're working for the rich. And here they are here. Here they are here.